Let's get ready to learn. And in this corner, at 8 inches, 19 pounds, an 11-year-old rescue from somewhere in Kentucky. She only has 3 teeth left, yet she's ready to learn Tootsie the Terminator. And in this corner, an 8-inch, 19-pound, 12-year-old rescue from somewhere in the South, a survivor of many surgeries, George the Porge. Who's ready to learn? Are you ready to learn? I don't think they're ready to learn. They're so sick of me. They are done with me. Hey, lambs. What's up? Armstrong here. Why are you guys looking at me like that? I feel like you're looking at me kind of funny. I don't know what I've done. I just hanging out on my couch. I figured I'd shout out another video, talk a couple of things here about Lewis and Clark, and continue our journey in chapter 9. So I'm back. Yeah, back in action. So I hope everybody's okay up there in the Hook of Red. Hope you're hanging in. Hope you watched my last video and you liked it. Thanks for watching it. I still feel like you guys are looking at me kind of funny, but I really don't know why. Now listen, back to the usual. I've contacted a lot of my students, and a lot of these students have gotten back to me. I'm back again. Armstrong here, you there. By the way, I stole that from Steve Summers. He's a famous broadcaster, sports broadcaster. I just don't want him to come after me for that one. You know what I mean? So anyway, most of you have gotten back to me. I really appreciate that. I've contacted everybody. If you didn't get back to me and you're looking at me, you need to get back to me. You know how to do it. John Armstrong at rhcsd.org. So do it. Thirdly, this is not required. You're not required to watch this thing. It's not a part of you and my class. This is me wanting to teach this stuff and you wanting to learn it. So if you want to stick around and watch the video and learn a little bit about Marbury versus Madison, the goals of Lewis and Clark, and why Napoleon sold us Louisiana Territory, excellent. If not, you don't have to. But I'd love to have you here. So my little buddy, you know it. Now, those are the 3 things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Marbury versus Madison. We're going to talk about Napoleon selling us Louisiana Territory. And of course, we're going to talk about the goals of Lewis and Clark. So let's do it. Bam. And if you notice, I'm holding the phone the right way today, which is really, really big in my world. So I would be remiss if we didn't talk about this real quick. And this is an interesting court case for a couple of reasons. Number one, a lot of historians think that this is the most important court case of all time. And that is because it establishes the idea of judicial review. And we already know this because we talked about this with regards to the Constitution, that judicial review is the idea that the Supreme Court can declare an act of the president or a law passed by Congress as unconstitutional, and they can get rid of it. And the first time this happened was in the court case Marbury versus Madison. And basically what happens here is, right before John Adams leaves office, he appoints a bunch of judges. We call them the midnight judges. There's about 58 of them. And he sets them up. The United States Senate approves all of these nominations, and these guys are set to become judges in federal district courts, pretty much in the Washington, D.C. area. Well, when Thomas Jefferson becomes the president, he notices that a lot of those judgeships weren't given out. They weren't commissioned, meaning in order for someone to get the job, you actually had to give them a commission and say, hey man, here's your commission, you get to start, the job is yours. Well, when Jefferson becomes the president, his Secretary of the State, James Madison, he tells Madison, listen, any of the ones that are still around, any of those commissions where we're supposed to appoint these guys, don't hand them out. Real interesting side note, John Marshall, the Supreme Court Chief Justice at this time, was actually the Secretary of State for Adams. So he was real busy. He didn't get all of those commissions out. And of course, he had to be sworn in as the Supreme Court Chief Justice because he swore in Thomas Jefferson as the president. So it makes it even more confusing. Anyway, Marbury doesn't get his commission. He's bent about it. So he goes to the Supreme Court. He's like, yo, they should give me my job. They should give me my commission. As a matter of fact, he asks for a court order, or there's a big fancy word for it, a court order to show why he hasn't gotten his commission. And John Marshall looks at the case, and here's what he decides. He decides a couple things. Number one, that Marbury should have his job. Number two, that he should be able to redress any grievances that he has. But then he says something really interesting. He says that, hey, also, by the way, in a kind of by the way mentality, he says, Justice John Marshall, he spoke for a totally unanimous court when he says, hey, you know what? The Judiciary Act of 1789 is unconstitutional. Marshall states that the court's powers come from the Constitution, not Congress. And because the Judiciary Act of 1789 is unconstitutional because it enlarges the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court that is already outlined in Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, he says, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. What I'm basically saying here is that although you have the right to keep your job, the Judiciary Act of 1789 is unconstitutional. Therefore, that is the first time that the Supreme Court says, hey, this is unconstitutional, we need to get rid of it. And they do. John Marshall establishes this important principle. He says, hey, if the president does an act that we believe is unconstitutional, or if Congress passes a law that we believe to be unconstitutional, then we can go ahead and axe it. And this is established in the court case Marbury versus Madison. Who cares? I hear you. But you need to care because Marbury versus Madison establishes judicial review. And a lot of people think that that's the most important or most powerful part of our government. The idea that the Supreme Court can declare an act of the president or a law passed by Congress as unconstitutional. All right, so that was in the Marbury versus Madison case. Raise your hand if you care. Where are my students, by the way? Where are all my students here? Looking for them. Well, Jefferson, he is going to have an interesting presidency, kids. And, the next thing that comes up on his agenda is the Louisiana Territory. And, we spoke a little bit about this. Remember Pinckney's Treaty, 1795? It was the treaty with Spanish that allowed us to use the Mississippi River. It allowed us to use the port of New Orleans. And, of course, it established the 31st parallel as our southern border. Well, get this. In 1803, in a secret treaty, with Spain, France acquires the Louisiana Territory. Now, listen. Once Napoleon takes power over there during the French Revolution, he starts fighting every nation over there. And one of those nations that he fights is Spain. And in 1803, Spain cedes the Louisiana Territory to France. And remember, before the American Revolution, before the French and Indian War, France did already have this territory. Remember, we called it New France, and it stretched from present-day Canada all the way to Louisiana. So Napoleon's thinking to himself, this is going to be great. I'm going to go right after this. I am going to set up some colonies there, and I'm going to reestablish New France, right? Well, it's good thinking. Also, by the way, he's got this territory called Haiti, and Haiti's producing lots of sugar. And Napoleon's thinking to himself, if I can get Louisiana, maybe I can grow some more sugar over there, and we can make even more money. So he acquires it from the Spanish, and his hope is to bring French troops there and revive New France. But a couple things happen. The first thing that happens is Napoleon is crazy surprised at how many Americans are in New Orleans. And remember, Americans are in New Orleans because that's where we store all those goods that come from the Ohio Valley, all those foodstuffs down to New Orleans. And remember, that's where we also store all those manufactured goods that come from the big cities to New Orleans that need to go up the Mississippi River to all of those farms. So he can't believe how many Americans in New Orleans, and he's thinking to himself, gee, if the Americans just might gobble up and take New Orleans, and he probably was right. So that's one of the reasons why he's going to sell it to us. We have so many Americans in New Orleans, and he's thinking to himself, they're going to take it anyway. And he's also got this revolt going on in Haiti. Toussaint Louverture's uprising in Haiti. And this is really an amazing part of history. Toussaint Louverture actually leads a successful slave uprising in Haiti. And this Haitian Revolution is really going to last from 1791 to 1803. And this is just a thorn in Napoleon's side. He is just, he's trying to stop this rebellion. He loses over 20,000 soldiers, many of them to diseases. He's like running around trying to catch Toussaint Louverture over the hills of Haiti. And for about 3 or 4 years, this has become totally exhausting. I think the last straw really is his brother-in-law. He's got a brother-in-law named Charles Leclerc. And he gives Leclerc a lot of power and sends him to Haiti to catch Toussaint Louverture. And Leclerc ends up dying there. And lots of historians think that, once Charles Leclerc dies, Napoleon's kind of like, oh man, forget this whole Haiti thing, forget this whole North America thing. Let me just go back to Europe and continue my successful campaigns. On a side note, they do capture Toussaint Louverture and send him to France. But the uprising doesn't end with his capture. It continues and finally ends in Haiti's victory in 1804. So he's surprised that there are many Americans that are determined to keep the port of New Orleans open. He's got this uprising in Haiti that is just an absolute pain for him. It's costing him money. It's costing him soldiers. And then the last one is probably the most important one. Yes, he's at war with Great Britain again. And of course, he needs coin because wars aren't cheap. So he's saying to himself, if I sell this territory to the Americans, they certainly want it. I definitely stand to make a lot of money. Now, here's what gets interesting. Ready? Well, to me. Thomas Jefferson, remember Robert Livingston, the Chancellor from Claremont? Well, guess what? He's a Democratic Republican. Remember, Democratic Republicans were the common people, the farmers. So we see a lot of Democratic Republicans in upstate New York. And as being a loyal Democratic Republican, Jefferson actually makes him the minister to France. So Jefferson sends Robert Livingston, yes, the Chancellor, to France to buy the city of New Orleans. And Livingston's like, all right, I got it. He gives him about $8 million and says, just go buy New Orleans. We need that city because all of our merchants there, we need to store our goods there to send them up to the big cities. So go get the city of New Orleans. And Livingston's not there a month when Jefferson doesn't like what he's doing, and he sends James Monroe to be his babysitter. Yeah, I know, it's interesting in history, like Jefferson, like the Virginians and the New Yorkers, they had this weird distrust for each other. Although Livingston was a Democratic Republican and so was Jefferson didn't trust him. And Livingston didn't trust Jefferson. And we see this play out in the purchase of the Louisiana Territory because Jefferson thinks that Livingston needs a babysitter. So he sends his buddy James Monroe over there to get this deal done. And of course, maybe some of you know, maybe you don't, Napoleon, he comes out and he dangles the whole thing at him. He says, listen, you want New Orleans, I'll give you the Louisiana Territory. And, Livingston and Monroe are like, well, what is the Louisiana Territory? He's like, hey man, it's all of the land from New Orleans all the way up through the Great Plains. As a matter of fact, it composes every single river or stream that flows in to the Louisiana Territory. So all of those rivers and streams on the left side of that orange patch, all of those streams, the rivers, the Arkansas River, the Red River, the Missouri River, all of those rivers and streams that flow into the Mississippi, that is considered Louisiana Territory. And he sells it to us for 15 million bucks, which comes out to about 3 cents an acre. Of course, they want gold, and we actually have to borrow money from the Netherlands to get this deal done, but we get it done. But a lot of people are upset with Thomas Jefferson, believe it or not. You know, this is Jefferson's dream. All of this land out there. He's a Democratic Republican. How did Democrats Republicans think we should be making money? Farming. Look at all of that land to farm. Look at it all. Crazy. Now he's got to figure out if people can farm there. But he also did something weird. He signed a treaty. And in the Constitution, it doesn't say that the president can sign a treaty and acquire all this land. So, you know, as a strict constructionist, Jefferson's going to have to change his tune. And he's going to have to say, well, you know, this is a treaty. It's not a purchase of land, and he guises it under. It doesn't say in the Constitution, that the president can purchase land. But Jefferson claims that this is a treaty, and that's how he's going to get it approved by Congress, right? So look at that bad boy, the Louisiana Territory. Hey, you ready for this? It didn't matter if they purchased Louisiana Territory or not. Thomas Jefferson was going to send Meriwether Lewis and a team of men, a Corps of Discovery, out to this territory to check it out, no matter if we acquired it or not. But now that we got this land, we got to figure out what's going on out there. And that brings us to the third part of our mini video lesson today, and that is the 4 goals of Lewis and Clark. Oh, man. Did you get that? So, we purchased Louisiana Territory from Napoleon. Remember, we know why, because he's got that uprising in Haiti that's driving him crazy. He needs more money for the war against Great Britain, and he thinks we're just going to take the territory anyway. And we get the deal done. Thank you, Robert Livingston. And like I said, Jefferson's planning on sending people out here. He wants to know what's up with this land. Can we survive there? Can we farm there? What's our best deal out there? And these are the 4 goals that he gives to Lewis and Clark. He wants them to find the most direct, convenient water route across the continent. He thinks, Thomas Jefferson, first of all, he thinks that there are like snuffleupaguses out there in South Dakota. Yes, snuffleupaguses. And he also thinks that there's a direct water route across the continent. So he says to Lewis and Clark, see if you can find that water route and tell me about it. He also has the goal of checking out the land. He wants them to observe everything. Geography, the landforms, minerals, the things that are in the land, animals, and botany. Botany is plants. And he wants to see if there are any new plants out there, are there any new minerals out there, is there any minerals or resources out there that can make us money? Is the geography of the land good to farm on? What kind of animals are out there? He needs to know all this stuff. His third goal is to explore the friendly relationships with the Native Americans. And basically what that means is he wants them to be cool to the natives. Because Jefferson is thinking to himself, he wants to trade. He wants to make money. He knows that the Native Americans can help him do that. He knows that the Native Americans can help him discover what this land is all about. So he's pretty strict about that one. He doesn't want any fighting. He wants everybody to be cool. Be cool. And then the last one might be the most important one. He's like, hey man, make sure you don't forget to make some maps so we know where we're going when we go out there again and we learn about this land. And that way, when we have these maps, we know where these resources are. We know where this land is where we can farm. We know where these animals are. We know where these water routes are. So these are going to be the 4 goals of Lewis and Clark. All right? Wow. I think I put somebody to sleep. But, yeah, definitely. And my other dogs as well. I mean, I guess. I'm not really sure. But what do you think? I think we got through our goals today. Marbury versus Madison, selling Louisiana, and the 4 goals of Lewis and Clark. So next week, I'm going to come back with a video on Lewis and Clark. We're going to talk about their expedition. We're going to talk about the things they bring out there. We're going to see if they actually accomplished any of these goals, which they probably will. And that will be next time. All right, Red Hook? All right, well, it's always a pleasure. Stay out of trouble. Be good to your families. Watch this video. Oh, wait, I forgot my 3 questions. I got good ones today. So remember, you don't have to do it. If you want to, email me, tell me you saw the video, tell me you answer these questions. You ready? Number 1, what important principle does Marbury versus Madison establish? Do you know? How about number 2? Why does Napoleon sell us the Louisiana Territory? And number 3, and this is an important one, ready? Out of the 4 goals of Lewis and Clark, which one do you think is most important? Out of those 4 goals, which do you think is most important? All right, so thanks for watching. Be safe. I'll see everybody next week. Peace out, Red Hook.